For the latest information regarding the COVID-19 pandemic in Cupertino, please visit cupertino.org/coronavirus.
Hi everybody, thank you for joining us. I'm Larry Little. Millions of Americans are currently out of work, struggling to make monthly rent. But thanks to the swift action of our Board of Supervisors here in the county, a moratorium has been in place since March. And today, Deputy County Counsel Jeremy Avila joins me to discuss the eviction moratorium. But first, we want to let you know that prior to this segment, we did remove our face covering so everyone, including the American Sign Language interpreters, can clearly and properly understand the information that we will be sharing this morning. Jeremy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Larry.
So let's just talk about this eviction moratorium. What's the purpose of it and what protections does it provide?
Certainly. So the purpose of the eviction moratorium, as we all know, COVID-19 is a very unprecedented event that took, I think, everyone by surprise in some way or another. The purpose of the eviction moratorium here locally is to meet the economic needs of tenants and small business owners. We know that people are going to be struggling. We know that they're continuing to struggle. And so the goal of the ordinance is to prevent homelessness, displacement, and loss of businesses that are vital to the fabric of our community. And I believe you asked also about the protections, correct?
Yes.
So there are a couple different protections that are built into the ordinance. The primary one essentially is that if you are a residential tenant or a small business commercial tenant who has suffered a substantial loss of income or a substantial out-of-pocket medical expense due to COVID-19, you cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent. That's the big main component to the ordinance. The ordinance similarly protects you against what are called no-fault evictions if, again, you suffered a substantial loss of income or a substantial out-of-pocket medical expense. I think that's the core component of what the eviction moratorium is about.
So do people have to provide proof that they've been financially affected by COVID in order to be covered by this moratorium?
The ordinance does require tenants to provide documentation to their landlords in order to help prove that they are what we call an affected or qualified tenant. That documentation can be anything from pay stubs, bank statements. There's a illustrative list in the ordinance, but by no means is it exhaustive. Anything that's going to help demonstrate that you've suffered that loss of income or that you have suffered or incurred that out-of-pocket medical expense, anything along those lines, that'll be helpful in documenting that effect.
So let's talk about how long is the moratorium in place for, and how long do tenants have to pay the deferred amount?
So the current eviction moratorium ordinance is in effect until August 31st of this year. The Board of Supervisors is going to take up at its August 25th meeting whether to extend or amend the ordinance. Whenever the moratorium period ends, the ordinance, and this is due to an amendment from June, when the moratorium ends, an affected tenant will have 12 months to repay their rent. 50% of that rent, however, must be repaid within the first 6 months.
So does this protect only renters? What about people who have mortgages?
So the eviction moratorium only applies to residential and to qualified small business commercial tenants, or tenants who qualify rather as small businesses. It unfortunately does not protect homeowners or folks who have mortgages, no.
So when you say small businesses, how do we quantify what is a commercial small business?
Good question. So if you go to the county's Office of Supportive Housing website, we have a COVID-19 page that addresses the eviction moratorium and housing-related needs and questions. On that webpage, there are frequently asked questions, FAQs, and in those FAQs are some guidelines that can help folks determine and identify if they qualify as a small business. Ultimately, what you'll see in the FAQs and in the course of determining if you are, the guidelines are rules issued by the Federal Small Business Administration, and those rules will help people determine or identify if they qualify as a small business.
So I know the state and some of the cities have eviction moratoriums in place as well. How does our county eviction moratorium match up against those moratoriums?
So right now, as we've been seeing since March, the governor has issued a series of executive orders. And what those executive orders do in the eviction moratorium space is it gives counties and cities the power and the ability to pass their own regulations, their own ordinances to help meet the crisis and meet the needs of the moment. Where we also see a lot of parallel action is between the county and the cities. And so if you look at the county's eviction moratorium ordinance, what it says is that if there is a more protective component, whether it be the county's ordinance or a city's ordinance, that more protective component will apply to the residential or commercial tenant.
So I know some people have sent us information about being harassed by their landlords, saying, when are you going to pay? Can you pay? Now, I will say, when this first happened, my landlords actually checked in with me, a friendly check to say, are you going to be able to pay this month? So what can people do if they feel they're being harassed by their landlords? Because a lot of landlords are not educated on the moratorium as well, and it's for them also to know the information.
Certainly. So, the first point I think to say is certainly we would hope that no landlord is harassing their tenants and that no tenant is feeling harassed or taken advantage of. That, I think I would almost say it goes without saying, but it always helps to mention it. Referencing the Office of Supportive Housing's website, again, we have those frequently asked questions that are up there, and those are resources not just for tenants, but for landlords as well. There are forms, there are template documents that landlords and tenants can use to help guide them through this process. And so that's a resource that's available for everyone to help educate themselves about what this ordinance does and how it works. With respect to the specific question of what to do in the event of harassment, if a tenant does feel that they are being harassed, a tenant should not only look at the FAQs on the Office of Supportive Housing's website, but a tenant should also consider speaking to a legal counsel, whether it's an attorney or a legal aid clinic, to help get some assistance or direction on what to do from there. The other thing that I would point out is that sections 3C8 and 3C9 of the ordinance do say that a landlord has to inform a tenant of their rights with respect to repayment and with respect to other protections under the ordinance. And if if the landlord fails to do that, or if the landlord violates any other protection or provision of the ordinance, then the landlord can face civil action as well. So there are a lot of, I think, components to ensuring that tenants are protected, but there are also components to making sure that landlords understand what their obligations are and what they need to do under this ordinance.
Mm-hmm. So let's go over this part again. I know you mentioned something about it earlier. So what is next for the eviction moratorium? Because I know the expiration is coming up soon. And how can people stay up to date on finding the information regarding the eviction moratorium?
Certainly.
Latest?
So what's next is August 25th, the Board of Supervisors will be revisiting the issue of the eviction moratorium ordinance. Up for discussion will be whether to extend the ordinance and whether to amend it in any way that makes sense. And there was some discussion of this at the Board of Supervisors meeting yesterday, asking for ideas or direction on what can be done to supplement the ordinance. So the first thing that I would recommend is people watch this upcoming meeting on August 25th to see what the Board of Supervisors decides and what the discussion is around there. Other than that, again, there is the Office of Supportive Housing's webpage for the eviction moratorium that does get updated regularly. And so I would encourage people, if they don't have the time to tune in to the Board of Supervisors meeting, we all have things to do, I understand. So at the very least, check out that FAQs page, check out the Office of Supportive Housing's website, and see what some of this news is about the eviction moratorium, because I do suspect that there will be some new updates to provide to the public come August 25th.
So I know some of our landlords here in the county, you also have a mortgage to pay, and Jeremy said that the eviction moratorium does not cover mortgages. But what you can do is contact your mortgage company and see if you can work out something with them. A lot of times those payments can be placed on the back end, or they will do an entire loan modification for you. So check with your mortgage company. So what does this moratorium what is not covered? Because a lot of people feel like it's an umbrella to not be evicted at all, but that is not the case. You can be evicted.
You can be evicted, yes, that's correct. So things that are not covered, as we mentioned already, mortgages and homeowners, those are not covered by the moratorium ordinance. What we call at-fault evictions are not covered. And essentially that would be, an example would be a tenant who is violating the lease in some way. So for example, a tenant who's busting holes into the walls or causing damage to the property. That would be an example of an at-fault eviction, and that would be permitted under the ordinance. The triggering conditions that the ordinance requires are, again, that substantial loss of income or that substantial out-of-pocket medical expense. And once you have one of those, then that starts to put you on the track of what the ordinance may or may not cover.
Mm-hmm. All right, any closing thoughts or anything you would like to add?
What I would just like to say is, referencing again where we started, this is a challenging and unprecedented time for not just our community here in the county, but nationwide. And what the goal, again, of this legislation here locally is to take on, head-on, homelessness and displacement and preserve the fabric of this community, and to do it not only in a way that's effective, but also that's legal, that keeps the fabric of this community together and keeps the county strong and doesn't see further homelessness, further displacement, or loss of businesses that are vital to this community.
Jeremy, thank you so much for providing information and being here. We'll have you back if anything changes in the coming weeks, which I'm sure it will.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We want to let you know that Facebook Live in Spanish is coming up today at 11, and also it's on Friday at 11, and we have Facebook Live in Vietnamese on Thursdays at 10 a.m. And it's supposed to be a very warm week this week, so we'll have information on how you can stay cool and possibly information on cooling centers on our social media pages, so be sure to check them out to stay up to date. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a safe day, and we will see you back here for Facebook Live in English on Friday.
For the latest information regarding the COVID-19 pandemic in Cupertino, please visit cupertino.org/coronavirus.